The views and opinions of the guests do not reflect the views and opinions of the hosts. Furthermore, the views and opinions of the hosts do not reflect the views and opinions of the show, the management of this page, and the affiliations of the hosts. Mula sa aming tinutuluyan dito sa Singapore, welcome po muli sa isa na namang gabi ng makabuluhan at napapanahong talakayan. Ito po ang Weekends with Rated J.
Ang programang ginawa para sa mga overseas Filipino mula sa kapwa overseas Filipino. Inyo po itong napapanood ng live tuwing Sabado ng gabi sa tulong na rin ng teknolohiya at ng social media.
Magandang gabi po sa lahat ng mga nanonood dito sa Singapore and all over the world. Maraming salamat pa rin po sa inyong patuloy na pagtitiwala. Ako po si June Rigonan.
At ako naman po si Dazeline Zapata. Good evening, partner, at syempre magandang gabi sa lahat ng ating viewers. Magandang gabi rin sa ating mga kaibigan at kakwentuhan tuwing Sabado ng gabi. For more updates, please like and follow our official Facebook page na Rated J at sa aming YouTube channel na Rated J Official. Para naman po sa inyong mga komento, mag-post o mag-send ng message sa ating Facebook page o di kaya naman ay mag-email sa ratedjofficial@gmail.com.
Alright, so ulitin po namin ang Facebook, Rated J Official, at ang ating YouTube, The Rated J Official. At sa inyong mga katanungan, pwede po kayo mag-email sa ratedjofficial@gmail.com. Okay, marami pong salamat. So eto na muna ang ating balitaan ngayong gabi. At narito na ang mga malalaking balita na pinag-usapan sa Singapore at sa iba pang parte ng mundo. Ihahatid namin sa inyo sa pinaka-siksikliglig na online balitaan. Narito ang Headline News. Sa ulo ng mga nagbabagang balita. Community transmission ng COVID-19 infection sa Singapore patuloy ang pagbaba. Daily new cases sa Pilipinas pababa na rin. Abangan ang detalye. Pinay na aksidente sa pagbibisikleta. Matapos ang 2 operasyon at 10 araw sa ICU, gumaganda na ang lagay. Alamin ang latest sa biktima. Safe cruise sa Singapore lalayag na. Cybersecurity labeling scheme sa Singapore inilunsad. 43 na senior officers ng PhilHealth umalis na sa pwesto. At Singapore-based na Pinoy panalo sa New York Festival. Mula sa News Center ng Rated J sa Singapore, ito ang Headline News.
Patuloy nga ang pagbaba ng community cases sa Singapore. Sa nakalipas na 3 araw, 0 community transmission at halos mga imported cases lamang ang naitala. Nadagdagan ng 7 na bagong kaso ng COVID-19 infection ngayong araw at isa lamang sa mga ito ang galing sa community transmission. Isa naman ay mula sa dormitoryo, samantalang 5 ang imported cases. Umabot naman sa 340 na ang kabuang bilang ng mga Pilipino na nagpositibo sa COVID-19 sa Singapore. Ngunit 9 na lamang sa kanila ang nagpapagaling sa mga ospital at isolation facilities. Sa Pilipinas naman, bumababa na rin ang kaso, ngunit hindi pa rin ito bumababa sa 2,000 ang kaso kada araw. Pinakamarami pa rin sa Metro Manila at pumapangalawa ang Cavite. Nagtala ng 2,249 na bagong kaso ngayong araw at may 54,594 active cases sa kasalukuyan, habang ang kabuuang kaso naman ay nasa 336,926 sa mga nagpositibo simula noong Enero.
Samantala, bumubuti na raw ang kalagayan ni Marilu Garcia Calapini, ang foreign domestic worker na naaksidente habang nagbibisikleta sa Pulau Ubin. Ito ay ayon sa huling update ng employer ni Marilu na si Jeanette Mock. Ayon kay Jeanette, nakakaupo na raw si Marilu na may suporta at nawala na rin daw ang kanyang lagnat. Tinanggal na rin daw ang tubo na nakakabit sa kanyang utak. 10 araw nang nasa ICU ang biktima bago inilipat sa high dependency ward kung saan siya ngayon inoobserbahan. Malaki raw itong maaaring ilipat or malapit na raw itong maaaring ilipat sa general ward ayon pa rin sa kanyang employer. Namasyal sa Pulau Ubin at nagkasundong magbisikleta sina Marilu at ang dalawa pa nilang kaibigan noong September 27. Habang pababa na sila sa paanan, napansin ng dalawang kaibigan ni Marilu na bigla na lamang nawala ito. Hinanap nilang kaibigan at laking gulat na lang nang nakita itong nakabulagta sa tabi ng kanyang bisikleta. Ayon naman sa kanyang employer na si Jeanette, may malay ang biktima nang dinala sa Changi General Hospital, subalit mabilis na bumagsak ang kalagayan nito. Ayon pa sa employer, paralisado ang vocal cords ni Marilu at hindi sigurado ang mga doktor kung tuluyan na ngang hindi makakapagsalita ang nasabing biktima. Sa mga nakalipas na araw, nagpapakita naman daw ito ng mga senyales ng paggaling at nakapag-video call pa siya sa kanyang pamilya sa Burgos, Ilocos Norte. Narito ang panayam namin sa mga employers ni Marilu.
So last time I went to see her, she was able to wave and, video.
So she recognizes you.
I think so. I asked
We're
her.
not sure because she cannot
She
speak.
can't speak, so her vocal cords are still paralyzed. She did have a drain in her brain, but they took that out now. So things are going pretty good, but obviously there's still a lot on the road to recovery. But a lot of the major things that we were really worried about, like her not waking up, has come to pass, which is good. She's been able to move her hands and her legs, so that's really good news. Right now, we're just hoping that she can breathe on her own at some point. I think that would really help her quality of life, and that she can eat on her own. She's still being fed through a feeding tube. And hopefully that, I don't know, that she can start speaking again, and she can talk to us. I don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
Sa kasalukuyan, nasa mahigit 50,000 na ang nagagastos na sa ospital at hanggang 20,000 Sing dollar lamang ang babayaran ng insurance. Kung kaya't gumawa ang mag-asawang employer ni Marilu ng fundraising sa www.give.asia. Para sa inyong mga tulong, maaari pong mag-donate sa link na nasa ating report sa Rated J.
Sa ibang balita naman, excited na ba kayong magbiyahe? Simula ngayong Nobyembre, magsisimula na ang Cruises to Nowhere ng Singapore. Ito ay magbubukas ng muli, ngunit hanggang 50% lamang ang makakasakay dito at kinakailangang mag-test para sa COVID-19 ang lahat ng pasahero bago sila makasakay. Singapore residents lamang ang papayagang sumakay sa ngayon. Kasama sa pilot trip ng Safe Cruise, ang Genting Cruise Lines at Royal Caribbean International. Kinakailangang sumunod pa rin sa paggamit ng mask at ng mga safe distancing protocol ang mga pasahero. Nahinto ang mga paglalayag ng mga barko noong pang March 13. Ang bawat cruise ay magtatagal lamang ng 2 hanggang 4 na araw at nagkakahalaga ng mahigit 350 Singapore dollars ang bawat biyahe.
Inilunsad ng Cybersecurity Agency ng Singapore o CSA ang Cybersecurity Labeling Scheme or CLS sa mga device na mabibili sa merkado. Sa scheme na ito, ilalahad ang mga cybersecurity provisions upang malaman ng mga mamimili kung aling produkto ang mas maayos ang cybersecurity at makakatulong sa pagpili ng device. Tutulong rin ang CLS sa mga manufacturer na umangat ang ibang mga brand at mabigyan ng pagkakataong makagawa ng mas maraming produkto na secured. Maliban sa presyo at functionality, magiging dagdag basihan na rin ito ng mga mamimili sa pagbili ng kanilang device. Uumpisahan ng CSA ang CLS sa mga Wi-Fi router at smart hub devices dahil sa mas maraming gumagamit ito sa ngayon at ang kaakibat na seguridad ng mga nasabing device. Maaring isa sa 4 o maaaring 1 hanggang 4 na stars o asterisk ang ibinibigay sa bawat modelo ng produkto. Kapag mas maraming asterisk, mas secured ang produkto sa cyber-related concerns.
Balik naman sa Pilipinas, nag-submit ng kanilang courtesy resignation at retirement ang 43 na senior officers ng Philippine Health Insurance Corporation o PhilHealth. Ito ay sa gitna ng kontrobersya ng di umano'y korupsyon sa nasabing ahensya. 27 sa opisyales ang naghain ng kanilang resignation, 21 dito ang mula sa main office at 6 naman mula sa mga regional branches. Samantalang 16 naman ang nag-retire. 10 mula sa main office at 6 mula sa mga rehiyon. Ito ay matapos magpahayag ang bagong presidente at CEO ng ahensya na si Dante Guieran na mag-resign ang lahat ng mga nakatanggap ng di bababa sa 109,593 kada buwan. Sa huling pag-iimbestiga, napag-alamang nagbigay ang PhilHealth ng 14 billion pesos sa mga ospital na apektado ng pandemya sa pamamagitan ng prepayment scheme bago pa ipinatupad ang circular na implementasyon ng nasabing scheme at wala itong buwis na kasama.
At sa ating huling balita, ating Proudly Pinoy segment, nanalo ng silver medal sa katatapos lamang na The New York Festivals ang isang Singapore-based Filipino director at producer na si Erickson Gangoso. Nagogi ang team ni Erickson sa kategoryang Best in Documentary for Social Issues para sa episode na The Candyman ng Dark Web ng Channel News Asia. Mula ito sa produksyon ng Sora House, kung saan siya ang director at executive producer, at ng Singapore Media Giant na Media Corp. Tungkol ito sa isang online pedophile group mula sa Indonesia na nabuo noong 2016. Ang nasabing grupo ay may halos 8,000 na miyembro na may access sa halos 10,000 na malalaswang litrato at videos. Nitong Setyembre, napasama naman ang isa pang docu na ginawa ni Erickson na Slum Food Millionaire sa mga nominado sa Venice TV Awards 2020. Tampok sa nasabing docu ang ilang mga pagkaing matatagpuan sa mga mahihirap na lugar gaya ng Tondo sa Pilipinas. Congratulations, Erickson, and we are proud of you.
At yan ang kabuuan ng ating headline news ngayong linggo, mga balitang kailangan ninyong malaman.
Tunay na serbisyong hatid ng Rated J para sa Overseas Filipino mula sa kapwa Overseas Filipino. Ito ang Rated J Headline News. Alright, diretso na tayo sa ating talakayan ngayong hapon, ang ating sa ating mga mahal na foreign domestic worker. Maraming pinagdadaanan ang mga FDWs mula sa kanilang pag-apply sa ahensya sa Pilipinas hanggang sa pangungulila nila sa kanilang mga pamilya dito sa Singapore.
Totoo yan, partner. Ang hirap siguro sa kanila na syempre mawalay sa kanilang mga pamilya. Imbis na sariling magulang, asawa o anak ang kanilang inaalagaan, ibang pamilya ang kanilang pinagsisilbihan. Ngunit ano nga ba ang karapatan ng ating mga foreign domestic workers at ano ba ang mga regulasyon na kailangan nilang sundin habang nandirito sila sa Singapore? Panoorin natin to.
Domestic workers, domestic helpers, foreign domestic workers, nani, ate, ano man ang itawag sa kanila, sila ang ating mga kababayang tiniis ang sariling mga pamilya upang mag-alaga ng ibang pamilya dito sa Singapore. Mahirap, masaya, minsan nakakapagod na. Katulad din ng ibang hanap buhay. Subalit hindi ganun kasimple ang buhay ng ating mga kababayang FDW. Ang ilan, nagiging biktima ng illegal recruitment sa Pilipinas pa lamang. Ang iba naman, hindi maswerte sa kanilang employer at minsay nakakaranas ng pananakit, physical man o verbal. Ngunit karamihan pa rin naman nakakahanap ng panibagong tahanan na itinuturing na silang kabahagi na ng pamilya. Subalit alam niyo ba na may mga pananagutan na nakalahad para sa ating mga mahal na foreign domestic worker upang maprotektahan ang kanilang karapatan? At alam niyo ba na may mga pananagutan o responsibilidad na kailangang sundin ang ating mga FDW habang sila ay nagtatrabaho sa Singapore? Halina't alamin natin ang mga karapatan at pananagutan ng ating mga FDW sa Singapore sa isa na namang edisyon ng bagong inaabangang programa tuwing Sabado ng gabi, Weekends with Rated J. Go ahead, partner.
Ayan, sige, pakilala natin ang ating mga panauhin, no? Mulay nating welcome sa ating programa sa Weekends with Rated J, ang ating very own labor attaché mula sa Embahada ng Pilipinas dito sa Singapore, Sir Mr. Saul De Vries. Sir, magandang gabi po and welcome back to Weekends with Rated J.
Yeah, magandang gabi, Juan and Z, and thank you for having me back.
Yes, ang ating
Ito yung,
suki.
programa.
Ang ating
Suking-suki na natin si Sir. Alright. Mamaya po ay makakapiling natin si Mr. Nizam. Muhammad Nizam. Sandali, pasok muna natin siguro siya. Nizam is from FAST. He will be joining us in a while. Nizam will just have to ask a few questions to Labat first with regards to the accident that happened. We will get back to you in a while. All right? Okay.
Welcome and thank you, Nizam, for joining us.
Yeah. All right. Sir, itatanong muna namin bago tayo dun sa main topic natin. Ano ho ba ngayon ang binibigay na tulong ngayon ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas para sa ating biktima ng aksidente na si Marilu?
Well, sa ngayon, syempre, nasa monitoring stage pa lamang tayo, no? Kasi yung pagbisita ng aming mga kasama sa Polo last Saturday, yun yung purpose kung bakit sila binisita, no? Kung bakit siya binisita, minamonitor muna natin yung sitwasyon. Hindi pa natin, wala pa kami may bibigay na tulong kasi siya ay nasa hospital pa, no? Siyempre kung ready na siyang ma-repatriate, no, sa Pilipinas, doon tayo papasok. At pagdating sa Pilipinas, meron naman tayong, ang OWA naman merong medical program, no? Pwedeng maibigay yon sa kanya, no, kung kailangan pa niyang ipagpatuloy yung kanyang medical treatment pagdating sa Pilipinas. So sa ngayon, we're just monitoring her condition, and we will see, no, based dun sa magiging evaluation natin kung ano yung pwede natin maibigay sa kanya pagdating sa Pilipinas.
Sir, itatanong ko lamang din po yung tanong nila sa akin kanina na kapag ka ho ba na-repatriate na siya sa Pilipinas, ang OWA ho ba ang in charge sa coordination sa Pilipinas na o kailangan pa rin ho yung pamilya niya ang mag-asikaso ng lahat ng transportation, ambulance, or whatsoever? Ano ho ba yung patakaran nun?
Definitely, yung OWA yung magko-coordinate, no, dun sa regional office na pupuntahan, no? Yung regional office na may sakop dun sa lugar ni Marilu, no? In this case, yung Region 1 kasi galing sa Ilocos Norte, no? So, OWA na yung magko-coordinate sa Region 1, no? Ang Region 1 kasi ang eventually magbibigay ng assistance dahil dun si Marilu, dun ang final destination ni Marilu, no, later on kapag siya ay na-repatriate na. Siyempre, yung pagbibigay ng ambulansya, that can also be taken care of by OWA. Even yung request for exemption from mandatory quarantine in the Philippines, that can also be handled by OWA. So we'd like to assure the family there in the Philippines that the Philippine government through OWA, through the Department of Labor and Employment, would really help Marilu, no, when she returns to the Philippines.
Maraming salamat ho dun sa balita niyan kasi napakalaking they really feel that, I mean, the employers here in Singapore, they really feel that kailangan po nila ng tulong mula sa gobyerno kasi alam nila na kaya nilang tumulong dito sa Singapore pero pagdating sa Pilipinas hindi daw po nila alam kung meron ho bang tutulong sa pamilya niya. Ang tanong ko na lamang po tungkol po sa kanyang mga benepisyo, kung member po siya ng OWA at saka ng SSS, may mga benefits po siya doon, di ba? Tama ho ba ako?
Yes, ngayon, no,
PhilHealth?
I can confirm that si Marilu is an active OWA member kasi yung latest OWA membership niya last January lang. So definitely she's entitled to OWA benefits. Posibleng mabigyan siya ng disability benefit, no? Kung hindi na talaga siya makakapagtrabaho muli, no? So, meron tayong medical benefit para din sa kanya na naghihintay, no, when she returned to the Philippines.
What about
we can also provide livelihood assistance, no, for her or for her family, no, kung hindi na talaga siya makakabalik sa trabaho.
paano po ang PhilHealth at saka SSS?
Well, we'll have to check, no, yung kanyang records sa PhilHealth or SSS. Siguro yung sa SSS, pwede natin i-check yan dun sa ating SSS representative dito sa Philippine Embassy. Sa PhilHealth, I'm not sure kung paano natin ma-check yung kanyang PhilHealth membership. But there's always a way naman to check her membership with PhilHealth.
Pwede ho yung mismong employers na dito sa Singapore ang mag-asikaso ng mga yun or kailangan sa Pilipinas na ho yung mga yun?
What do you mean?
Yung para dun sa SSS niya, PhilHealth, kailangan sa Pilipinas na yun naayusin po?
Yeah, pwede naman tumuling as representative.
Dito pa lang sa Singapore?
Yung family in the Philippines would be able to help. Yung employer, I don't see the role of the employer. Dun sa pag-claim ng SSS benefit. Yung family at saka yung ating SSS representative can do the application.
Okay, kasi alala talaga ho yung employers na dito sa Singapore nung ini-interview natin kanina lamang po. Anyways, partner, you have any other questions bago natin ipasok si Nan?
Siguro yung na lang, partner, kasi nga di ba binanggit kanina na maliit lang talaga kasi yung insurance na sinasagot ng yung kinukuhang insurance dito sa Singapore. Tapos talagang minsan hindi ito ang kauna-unahang domestic worker na naka-experience ito. Kung naalala ninyo yung nag-aneurysm before, di ba ganun din ang pinagdaanan ng employer. Sir, meron po bang ibang programa pa na hindi nabanggit na pwedeng malapitan ng ating mga kababayan na posibleng pagdaanan yung ganitong sitwasyon?
Well, ito yung hindi ko maintindihan, no? Kasi under MOM regulations, dapat may personal accident insurance. Yung personal accident insurance, dapat ang coverage yan 60,000 Singapore dollars. So dapat meron si Marilong ganyang klase ng insurance. Yung nabanggit ko kanina, no, pagdating sa Pilipinas, pwedeng pumasok yung OWA, no, yung medical rehabilitation program ng OWA, plus yung iba pang medical benefits ng OWA. But again, sa Pilipinas yan, ibibigay, hindi dito sa host country. Yung sa PhilHealth, kung siya ay member ng PhilHealth, maaaring yung mga pinaggagastusan na hindi na-cover ng insurance ay pwedeng i-reimburse sa PhilHealth kahit yung hospitalization ay nangyari sa labas ng bansa or wala sa Pilipinas. So kung si Marilu ay active PhilHealth member, maaari namang tulong yung PhilHealth dun sa tustos dun sa mga medical expenses niya dito sa Singapore.
Saan ho kaya nanggaling yung 20,000 na yun? Kasi yun lang din po.
Hindi, partner, kasi bilang employer, no, alam ko yung sinasabi na meron, pero hospitalization to. So maganda yung ipinoint out sa atin ni Labat ngayon na baka meron pang posibleng makuha kasi nga disgrasya yung nangyari. So baka pwedeng pumasok yung iba pang category dun sa insurance na kinuha ng employer niya. Pero yung basic kasi na required sa mga employer, yung pinakamababa para satisfy mo yung requirement, 20,000 yung sa hospitalization na allocation, kumbaga, partner.
Laging dalawa, no, if I may just point it out. Laging dalawa yung insurance na dapat kunin ng employer. One for hospitalization and another one for personal accident insurance. Yung medical insurance, 15,000 yung coverage. But yung personal accident insurance should have a 60,000 coverage per year.
Okay, siguro kailangan talaga i-check na rin ng employer niya, no? Yung kanyang makukuha dapat ng insurance. Alright, maraming salamat, sir, para sa inyong update. At hopefully ay gumaling na nga si Marilu as soon as possible. Alright, so isama na natin sa ating discussion si Nizam, si Mr. Muhammad Nizam. Siya yung Assistant Director for Operations sa FAST or Foreign Domestic Association Workers Association for Social Support and Training. Good evening to you, Nizam.
Yeah, good evening everyone. Just wanted to say magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat to everyone. I think my konti lang Tagalog, so I hope you all can give me a bit of slack here. Okay, my name is Nizam. I'm the Assistant Director for Operations at FAST. We are a non-profit organization supported by MOM under the ambit of the Ministry of Manpower. And we've been in existence since 2005, of course, to promote the welfare and well-being of all domestic helpers here in Singapore.
All right, you can bring down your microphone so we can hear you.
Sure, fantastic.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, great. Thank you very much for that. So, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna be splitting the questions to either kay Labat or kay Nizam. All right. Okay, go ahead, partner, for the first question.
Okay, we'll start. I think this question is directed towards Labat. So, what is the legal process of employing foreign domestic workers in Singapore?
Pwedeng Tagalog po siguro tayo, Labat. All right.
Sige, well, basically dapat yung employer should apply for a work permit, no? Kung wala kasing work permit, hindi maaaring makapasok at makapagtrabaho yung domestic worker dito sa Singapore, no? Siyempre, kailangan yung i-hire na domestic worker ay female, no? This is the requirement. This is under the regulation of the Ministry of Manpower. Dapat female siya, and then dapat 23 years old and above. From 23 to 50 years old. Maaari lamang yung more than 50 pag i-renew lang yung work permit, pero yung hanggang 60 years old lang yon. Tapos, syempre, dapat yung domestic worker ay magagaling dun sa bansang inaprubahan na source ng MOM. Like Philippines, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Indonesia. And of course, dapat yung i-hire ay merong 8 years, minimum of 8 years of formal education. So in the case of the Philippines, ang tinatanggap na proof ng MOM yung high school diploma. So merong ganyang qualification. So kasama yan dun sa legal process of hiring a domestic worker. Of course, dapat meron siyang employment contract, no? Nire-require ng MOM na mag-draw up ng employment contract. And in the case of Filipino domestic workers, meron tayong nire-recommend na standard employment contract. At ito'y binalangkas, no, ng POEA. Siyempre, kailangan din na i-register, no, yung pag-recruit at pag-hire, no, dun sa domestic worker sa POEA para siya ay mabigyan ng overseas employment certificate. So bago natin gawin yan, dapat yung kanyang kontrata ay isasubmit muna sa Philippine Overseas Labor Office for verification. No? Hindi mai-rehistro, no, sa POEA yung recruitment ng domestic worker kung walang fully verified employment contract. And then of course, pagdating dito, kailangan mag-comply yung domestic worker at saka yung employer dun sa procedural requirements ng Ministry of Manpower. So pagdating dito, dapat may pasa niya yung medical examination. kung hindi siya pumasa doon sa medical examination, maaaring pauwiin siya sa kanyang pinanggalingang bansa. Of course, required din na mag-undergo siya ng settling in program, no? Ito yung mandatory program for first timers, no? For new domestic workers here in Singapore. So within 3 days ng arrival niya, dati no, within 3 days upon arrival. Pero ngayon, within 3 days after the 14-day stay home notice, kailangan i-undergo yung SIP or yung settling in program. So ito yung mga legal processes na kailangan i-undergo ng employer at ng domestic worker to be able to legally stay in Singapore. At syempre, no, pagdating dito sa Singapore, kailangan ma-issue muna yung work permit bago makapagsimulang magtrabaho yung ating domestic worker sa kanyang employer.
Okay, pero eto pong pag-employ, pwede hong usually sa Pilipinas pa lang ho, pinoprocess na ho yan, di ba? Tama po ba ako? Paano ho kapag dito sa Singapore, pwede ho rin ba sila na mag-apply kung dito na mismo sa Singapore sila mag-a-apply bilang mga foreign domestic workers?
Kung yung tinutukoy mo ay magta-transfer, no, from one employer to another, pwede naman yun, no? Pwede
Pero kung bago, hindi.
Ano?
Kung first time po, hindi po pwede yun. Kailangan sa bansa kung sila nanggaling, dun pa lang ho ina-apply na kaagad.
Well, meron kasing mga cases na pumapasok dito bilang turista, no? And then dito lalapit sa employment agency o kaya nai-refer ng kamag-anak, ilalapit sa employer. Pwede naman yung employer kasi na mag-apply ng work permit. Kaso pag work permit holder ka, no, hindi ka pwedeng magtrabaho agad-agad, no, kung ikaw ay pumasok bilang tourist. Kailangan bumalik ka sa pinanggalingan o kailangan lumabas ka na Singapore bago ka makapagsimulang magtrabaho dito sa Singapore. Kung ikaw ay work permit holder. So hindi pwedeng diretso.
Okay, we understand, sir. All right. I think our next question we can give this to our visitor from FAST, but I think he would be speaking in English. So siguro, sir, kung medyo importante yung sasabihin ni Nizam, pwede ho siguro na pwede niyo hong dagdagan po kung sakali man na kailangan, especially kung Filipino po yung importante masabi po siya in Filipino. All right. So, Nizam, according to the laws of Singapore, what are the foreign domestic workers allowed to do, and what are the things that they are not allowed to do in Singapore?
Okay. In terms of the regulations that governs foreign domestic workers here in Singapore, it's governed by the Employment of Foreign Manpower Act, or the AFMA for short. So if we base it on MOM regulations, it's based on very, I guess, clear guidelines on what a domestic helper can do and what they are not allowed to do. And a domestic helper can only work for her employer, can only perform domestic chores, can only work at the residential address as stated in their work permit, and they cannot take on any part-time work, start their own business, or moonlighting anywhere else other than the residence of their employers. Of course, there are some leeway that can be provided for some families who may need their domestic helper to go with them to their parents' place, or to the place of their relative. So in terms of the MOM guidelines, quite clear as well that they can only be placed at another address during daytime. Yeah, and this is only to take care of the employer's young children or elderly parents, which then would which is acceptable for a domestic helper to be working or to be placed at another address.
Mm-hmm. All right. Meron ho ba kayong gustong idagdag, sir?
Well, kung yung domestic worker ay pagtatrabahuin sa ibang address na hindi nakalagay sa work permit niya, ano, dapat meron niyang written consent or written permission, no, from the Ministry of Manpower. So kailangan ma-point out din yan, no? Of course, ngayon siguro because of this COVID-19 situation, merong mga amendments dun sa MOM regulations, no. So nagdagdag ng responsibilidad ang regulations patungkol sa COVID-19. Halimbawa, dapat yung domestic worker ay mag-comply dun sa mga COVID-19 regulations, including yung mask wearing, yung physical distancing, yung pagsunod sa kanyang employer tungkol dun sa mga COVID-19 protocols. At of course, kailangan din na regular yung kanyang medical examination. Kailangan gawin niya yung medical examination at least every six months under MOM regulations. Of course, hindi siya pwedeng magtayo ng negosyo niya, no? Kung walang written permission from the Ministry of Manpower.
Pero
Hindi
nagbibigay
siya
ho ba ang
pwedeng-
MOM? Nag-approve naman po sila ang MOM sa mga ganun?
Wala pa ako nabalitaan. Pero ang MOM regulation, ang sinasabi niya dito, you cannot create or you cannot establish your own business without written permission. Hindi naman niya sinasabing you really cannot establish your own business. Sinasabi niya, you cannot without the written permission. So, siguro may konting leeway, no? May konting flexibility. Maaari kung ma-justify mo, no, na sa kanila na pwede kang magtayo ng negosyo, then okay lang. Pero generally speaking, you cannot.
Okay, understand, sir. Okay. Partner?
Hey,
sorry.
Of course, you cannot also be involved in illegal, immoral, and undesirable activities. You cannot borrow from unlicensed moneylenders, no? And of course, you cannot involve yourself in political activities. Ito yung pinag-bawas natin. Domestic.
Okay, so ulitin po namin na bawal ho na ma-involve kayo sa mga illegal na aktibidades dito sa Singapore. Yun pong nagtatrabaho po sa mga ibang mga bahay. Pag ganun ho ba ay considered po na hindi rin ho legal yung mga ganun?
Yes, that is considered an illegal act, no? That is a violation of the conditions of the work permit. So, maaaring ikaw ay pauwiin sa Pilipinas.
So, klaruhin ko lang, sir, ha, yung binanggit nyo kanina, bago yung question ni partner, no? Yung mga let's say ako, meron akong kamag-anak na gusto na magpatulong sa bahay nila na maglinis halimbawa. Pwede ho ba yung katulong, yung helper ko na pumunta sa bahay ng kapatid ko, for example?
No, that is illegal, no? That is a violation of the conditions.
Okay. At kung ipapagawa po nila yon sa iyo, ano ho ang dapat gawin ng FTW?
Dapat mag-report sa Ministry of Manpower. Na sila ay kasi maaaring pumasok na yan doon sa issue ng maltreatment, no? Kasi merong responsibilidad yung employer na wag i-ill-treat yung kanyang domestic worker. So kung at isa sa mga components ng ill treatment ay yung pag-cost ng yung bang pag-encourage sa domestic worker na kumuha ng isang illegal na bagay.
Alright, salamat po, sir. Okay? Partner?
Nizam, what are the things that the employer needs to give as benefits to the foreign domestic worker aside from the basic salary, insurance, and housing?
Yeah, I think it is not benefits per se, but rather the obligations that an employer must fulfill when employing a domestic helper. They must be responsible for the health and well-being of the domestic helper. They must provide for rest days, proper accommodation, adequate medical care, which is something which FAST has also championed for in terms of the insurance coverage for domestic helpers. We feel that I think employers can take a more participate more in perhaps increasing the insurance coverage for domestic helpers. I think we just heard the recently heart-wrenching news of Miss Marilu, and these are the kind of cases where if the medical insurance coverage were comprehensive, it could help the employers in providing medical assistance for the domestic helper. Of course, the employer must also ensure that the conditions for the domestic helper to perform their chores, to perform their duties, is safe. They cannot allow the domestic helper to be performing chores which endanger their lives, which may cause injury to them, and I think as well for employers in
Sorry,
providing to domestic helpers. They have to ensure.
sorry, Nizam, you have to repeat what you just said because
Yes,
you
see?
were.
Yeah,
Yeah, can you repeat that?
the whole thing.
No, no, no. The last two sentences.
Yeah. Okay. So as I was saying, I think the last, of course, maybe the most important thing that the employer must provide for the domestic helper is a safe working condition for them. They have to ensure that the domestic helper does not perform chores which may endanger their lives, which may cause injury to them. Right. And in terms of accommodation as well, they must ensure that the domestic helper would have reasonable privacy. Okay, they cannot be staying in a room together with male member of the family, for example. And I think these are um, very important requirements that the employer have to consider before employing a domestic helper here in Singapore.
Okay. You were talking about insurance. Can you quickly just explain what is the basic coverage of this
Right.
insurance and what is the main
Okay.
what is the requirement of the government in terms
Okay.
of
So
giving insurance?
the minimum insurance coverage for domestic helpers is $15,000. Um, I think that's the most basic premium. For a domestic helper, if they get into an accident or they are injured, and if they have to go to the hospital for surgery, one day at the hospital will already fetch you the bill in the thousands. So what we would like to try and encourage employers is to consider purchasing a premium which is slightly higher, but you still have that security at the back of your mind that if touch wood there was something bad will happen to your domestic helper, she's covered, and she will be able to receive the treatment that she deserves uh, uh, while being in Singapore.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, sure. I think this question siguro ibibigay ko kay Labat to, no. Sir, pagdating ho sa mga binabayaran ng mga employers sa FTWs, kasi lagi nilang naririnig yung mga security bonds, levy, mga ganun po. At minsan ho, parang mali ho yung nagiging impression ng ating mga foreign domestic workers pagdating ho sa mga ito. Katulad for example, nung nagkaroon ng ibinigay ang gobyerno na libreng levy sa ating mga employers, parang ang ilan sa mga foreign domestic workers natin nagtatanong bakit hindi sila ibinibigay sa kanila yung libreng amount na iyon. So, pwede nyo ho bang i-explain, at least quickly lang po, ano yung mga binabayaran ng mga employers natin sa ating mga foreign domestic workers?
Well, basically, isa lang naman yung regular na binabayaran ng employer sa gobyerno ng Singapore. Ito yung foreign worker levy. Parang doon sa sabi ng MON, this is actually a pricing mechanism to control the number of foreign workers. Parang itong foreign worker levy na to ay ini-impose sa mga employers dito sa Singapore para magdalawang isip sila, kakayanin ba nila na mag-hire ng foreign worker given this foreign worker levy na ini-impose sa kanila. Siguro kailangan linawin na itong foreign worker levy ay expense ng employer sa kanilang pera nanggagaling yung pinambabayad dun sa foreign worker levy. Nung nagsabi ang Singapore government na ibabalik yung foreign worker levy na binayad ng mga employers dito. Hindi dapat isipin ng mga foreign workers kasama yung mga Filipino domestic workers na dapat ibalik sa kanila. Kasi hindi kinuha yung pinambayad sa foreign worker levy sa sweldo ng mga foreign workers. Ito ay galing sa pera ng mga employers. So, employers dapat yung pagsulian ng pera. Ngayon, kung yung employer ay willing ibigay sa kanilang foreign worker yung nakuha niyang levy, okay lang, pero hindi yun obligasyon ng employer na ibalik kasi pera niya yun sa sarili niyang pera ang pinangbayad niya dun sa levy, at ito ay hindi inawas dun sa sweldo ng ating mga foreign workers dito sa Singapore. So yun lang yung binabayaran actually ng employer. In the case of domestic workers, merong tatlong rates na binabayaran ang employer. Yung normal rate, magbabayad sila ng 300 Singapore dollars every month para sa isang foreign domestic worker. Kung magdadagdag sila ng foreign domestic worker, additional 450 Singapore dollars ang ibabayad nila na levy sa Singapore government. Ngayon, merong tinatawag na concessionary rate. Ito yung mas mababang foreign worker levy, at ang qualified dito yung mga employer na merong anak na nakatira sa kasama nila na 16 years old and below, o kaya meron silang kasamang matanda na 67 years old and above, or meron silang kasamang person with disability dun sa kanilang household. Kaya mas mababa yung binibigay na o yung ini-invoke na levy na 60 Singapore dollars lang yung kailangan nilang bayaran. So monthly yan na binibigay. Meron tayong tinatawag na security bond. Ito ay isang one-time expense for during the duration of the work permit. Ni-require ng Ministry of Manpower na bumili ang employer bago pa dumating yung domestic worker dito sa Singapore. Kailangan bumili na siya ng security bond na coverage ay 5,000. Ano yung security bond? Ito yung promise, promise ng employer na ibabayad niya sa Ministry of Manpower kung sakali na merong paglabag sa regulasyon ang employer o yung domestic worker. So kung meron siyang 5,000 security band, ito ay i-call ng Ministry of Manpower in case there is a breach of regulation on the part of the domestic worker and the employer. So yung security bond comes in the form of banker's guarantee or insurer's guarantee.
Pero yung security bond po na yon ay hindi ho siya, for example, yung security bond niya is 5,000, hindi ho talaga bibilhin na 5,000 yun ng employer.
Yes,
Parang
hindi yan,
in the form of a bank,
right.
yan.
Right. Hindi yan bibilin, no? May premium yan, siguro mga less than 100 Singapore dollars. Pero pag kinol yan ng Ministry of Manpower, kasi banker's guarantee. So yung banker na nag-guarantee, siya ang magbabayad sa Ministry of Manpower, o yung insurer na nagbigay, no, ng security bond, siya ang magbabayad sa Ministry of Manpower. Yung bangko o yung insurance company ang hahabol sa employer para kunin yung 5,000.
All right.
Sir, quick follow-up lang po. Yung meron pa kasing additional pag Pilipino yung i-hire na foreign domestic worker, di po ba? May additional bond na nire-require ang polo o ang embahada? Pwede, yung 7,000, pwede niyo po bang saglit na i-discuss ito po?
Yeah, yung 7,000 Philippine Embassy bond naman, ito ay requirement ng Philippine government, particularly ng Philippine Labor Office. Ito naman ay para siguraduhin na yung terms and conditions sa kontratang pinirmahan ng employer ay matutupad. In case there is breach on the part of the employer, dun sa terms and conditions of employment stated in the employment contract, then Polo can call on the 7,000 band. Again, this is a performance band, no? Dapat ginagaranti ng employer na kanyang susundin yung mga terms and conditions outlined in the employment contract. Kapag hindi, pwedeng i-call ng Polo yung 7,000. Again, yung band can come in the form of banker's guarantee or insurer's guarantee. No? Kukunin namin yun sa bangko, kukunin namin sa insurance, at yung insurance o yung bangko ang hahabol sa employer.
Okay, at least yun. Yun, mas maliwanag na ngayon sa akin, at least sa akin, kung paano yung proseso nga ng mga security bonds na yan. Sir, since nabanggit niyo na po kanina yung mga kailangan na gawin, ano yung mga kailangan i-comply ng ating mga foreign domestic workers, tanong ko lang ho dun sa permit, tama ho ba na ang permit dapat ng foreign domestic workers lagi nang nilang dala-dala? Tama ho ba ako?
Oo, at hindi dapat yan i-confiscate or hindi dapat yan itago ng employer, no? Kasi anytime kapag nasa labas yung domestic worker, maaari siyang masita ng immigration officer, ng police officer, at i-demand sa kanya na ipakita yung kanyang work permit o yung kanyang IC. Kung natatandaan nyo, nung kasagsagan ng implementation ng circuit breaker measures sa Singapore, napakaraming nagkalat ng mga law enforcers na lumalapit, no, nilalapitan yung mga foreign workers at sine-check yung kanilang mga IC. So dapat laging kasama ng domestic worker saan man siya magpunta yung work permit.
Alright, okay.
Sir,
Salamat.
quickly lang po. Yung kasi yung work permit ay nasa foreign domestic worker, pero merong iba na yung mga pasaporte nila, sir, hindi nila hawak. Ito po ba ay bawal?
As far as the Philippine government is concerned, bawal na kunin ng sino man yung passport. Dapat ang may hawak lamang ng passport ay yung kung sino yung pinagbigyan, yung domestic worker o yung Philippine government. Philippine government ang may karapatan na humawak ng passport ng isang Pilipino. Maliban dyan, wala na dapat humawak ng passport.
Alright. Salamat po. Okay,
po.
go ahead,
Maraming
partner.
salamat, Labat. Niza, a few more questions about the foreign domestic workers. Can they marry a Singaporean or a Singapore PR? Are they able? Can they? Is it legal for them to get pregnant? And what are the other implications, or what are the implications in case that these are not allowed? If in case this happens.
Yeah, I think it's a popular question. I think some of our comments on the Facebook has been asking that as well.
Yes.
Okay. If a domestic helper wishes to marry a Singapore citizen or a PR, she must apply for approval from the Ministry of Manpower. Of course, I can't speak for the ministry. They would have their own respective criteria in approving a domestic helper to marry a Singapore citizen or a permanent resident. I guess the implications for these cases, we understand the need for human interactions while the domestic helper is here in Singapore. I guess the implications, if in some cases where this is not allowed and if their application is not approved, our concern is it will affect their mental well-being in performing their chores effectively, in being able to focus on their job and to be able to attend to the employer's needs as best as possible. I think these are some of the implications that a domestic helper would need to consider in cases where we don't receive approval for in marrying a Singapore citizen or a PR. I think another consequence of this is if a domestic helper gets pregnant, then the employer is expected to inform the Ministry of Manpower immediately, and in most cases, the domestic helper would then have to be repatriated back to their homeland. In terms of whether they can come back to Singapore to continue the employment, that will be up to the Ministry of Manpower to approve it. But of course, there are a lot of I guess variables that needs to be considered in terms of whether the domestic helper can be accepted back to work or continue the employment in Singapore if they were to get pregnant while here.
All right. Okay. Okay. My next question would then be in terms of cancellation of employment, and this goes for Nizam. Nizam, for example, if the employer wants to cancel the employment, are the foreign domestic workers allowed to still stay in Singapore for a certain number of days to be able to prepare themselves before going back? If so, can the FDW find a new employer herself, or does she need to go to an agency? And if she goes to an agency, does she need to pay again for the agency?
All right. I guess there are a lot of facets to the questions. I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, there's so many questions I have.
As best as I can. Okay. In terms of the termination of the employment, the domestic helper is given 14 days from the termination of the employment to either find a new employer, or then she will have to, failing that, then she will have to leave Singapore within that 14 days. Within that 14 days as well, of course, they will have to seek the permission of their existing employers if they want to transfer. It can go both ways. She can go through the an employment agency who may have processed the application before, or if the employer is supportive enough, the employer can actually facilitate the transfer of employer to a new one. And in terms of the agency fees and all that, this is something which the domestic helper, if let's say they go through the employment agency, they will be best placed or best positioned to advise on this. Different agencies have different processes in place in terms of a domestic helper who wishes to transfer to another employer. But with that being said, I think MOM has also detailed clearly on their website as well on the processes needed to facilitate the transfer. Like I said, it's a lot of variables, a lot of facets in terms of finding a new employer for a domestic helper. It's not as simple. It can take some time. So I guess it's best for where FAST is concerned is it will be best if there is already so-called a contractual agreement between the employer and the domestic helper in terms of if the employment is terminated, then what are the processes in place or what are the avenues that the domestic helper can go to seek assistance or to seek a transfer to a new employer.
Okay. All right. I think this is a very important note, which I would like to request my partner to help me to translate in Filipino what Nizam has
Sure.
mentioned.
I think
Partner?
Sir Labat Sau may have comments as well. I think he will be most positioned to also comment on this as well.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Labat, gusto niyo po bang dagdagan yung sinabi ni Nizam?
Para ho
Okay.
sa mga, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yung tanong nyo kung hanggang kailan.
Oo, kung hanggang
Pwede
kailan
mo
po at
sabihin.
kung makakancel po yung employment niya, pwede ho ba siya maghanap ng bagong employer? Kailangan ba siya sa ahensya pupunta? Magbabayad din naman ho ba siya ng panibagong agency fee?
Well, tama yung sinabi ni Zan, no, na kapag natapos, no, yung serbisyo ng domestic worker sa kanyang employer at kung ika-cancel yung work permit, dapat within 14 days, meron siyang 14 days to prepare for her return to the origin country. Siguro mas importante na kausapin ng domestic worker yung kanyang employer kung bago i-cancel yung work permit. Kasi pag na-cancel yung work permit, kailangan umuwi na, no, yung domestic worker. So dapat mag-agree muna yung domestic worker at yung employer kung kailan yung last day niya ng employment dun sa employer. At bago pa before the employer cancels the work permit, dapat meron ng kausap, no, o dapat pumayag na yung employer na siya ay lumipat ng ibang employer, no. So dapat may written consent yung existing employer dun sa kanyang paglipat sa susunod na employer. Maaaring dumiretso siya, no, sa bagong employer, maaaring kumausap siya ng diretso sa isang employer o kaya maaaring lumapit siya sa employment agency. But in either case, dapat may written consent yung existing employer na siya ay lumipat. Dahil kung hindi, wala ring mangyayari, no? Kailangan umuwi pa rin siya sa kanyang pinanggalingang bansa at doon muling magsimula ng kanyang application. Tungkol dun sa agency fee, no, na sinasabi dito kasi under MOM regulations, pumapayag yung MOM na maningil ang agency worth 1 month of salary for every year, no? Basta maximum of 2 months lang yan. Of course, sa konteksto naman, sa perspective ng Philippine government, hindi dapat kasi that is against POA rules and regulations. Dapat walang agency fee. No? So kung ang involved na agency dito ay isang POA accredited agency, well, our position there would be hindi dapat magbayad yung domestic worker, no? ng agency fee because that is against POA rules and regulations. Pero ito ay pinapayagan sa MOM regulation.
Mabilis na follow-up lang labat, no? Kasi yung sinasabi mo ngayon, isang buwan po yung kailangang, kumbaga inaalaw na bayaran. Pero merong mga accounts ang ibang mga foreign domestic workers sa kwento nila na hindi lang isang buwan ang binabayaran nila. Meron sa kanilang buong 6 na buwan silang kinakaltasan na either $20 lang yung nakukuha nila sa kada buwan kasi nga nagbabayad pa sila ng agency fee. Ano po yung alam natin dito sa side ng Polo?
Well, hindi bagong issue yan. Talagang maraming mga domestic workers na nakakaranas ng salary deduction for several months. Umaabot ng 6 na buwan. Pero dapat tignan natin, ito ba'y magkano talaga ang kinakaltas sa kanila? Maaaring 6 na buwan silang kinakaltasan, pero hindi naman buong sweldo yung kinukuha. Baka naman yung kinakaltas sa kanila ay worth 2 months lang na salary na ginawang installment for several months, let's say 6 months. So, kailangan linawin natin magkano talaga ang kinaltas sa kanyang sweldo. Magkano yung kabuuang kinaltas sa kanyang sweldo. At para saan yung pagkaltas na yun. Kung ito ay placement fee, definitely kung isang accredited agency ang gumawa niyan at yung domestic worker ay lumapit sa amin, ang magiging position namin dyan, ibalik sa domestic worker yung placement fee sapagkat ito ay hindi pinapayagan ng POA at hindi kami po pwedeng pumayag na ito ay kaltasin sa sweldo dahil nga ang aming mandato ay implement ang POA rules and regulations. So marami na kami, if I may just inform you, na since January hanggang August, humigit kumulang na 18,000 Singapore dollars ang naipabalik namin sa ating mga domestic workers na lumapit sa amin at nag-reklamo ng salary reduction na excessive.
Wow. Maraming salamat po sa tulong nyo sa ating mga kababayan for that. Okay, sir, kung matapos na ho yung kontrata nila, sino ho ba dapat ang magbabayad ng repatriation? Sila ba mismo o kailangan yung amo nila ang magbabayad?
Definitely, yung employer should bear the cost of repatriation for whatever reason nung repatriation.
Okay.
Under MOM rules and regulations.
Basta kahit na i-cancel yung kanyang employment, hindi tapusin yung kontrata, ang employer dapat ang magbayad.
Yes.
Okay, sige po. Alright, go ahead, partner.
Nizam, in the MOM website, they mentioned something about the foreign domestic worker interview. What is this FDW interview and why do they need to go for this interview?
Yes, I think it is an initiative by the Ministry of Manpower where a domestic helper may be selected to go for an interview, especially if she's in the first few months of employment. I think if she's selected, her attendance for the interview is compulsory. We understand that a domestic helper will need time to adjust to her new working and living environment, especially definitely if she's working in Singapore for the very first time. Of course, if she can adapt well all the better, and she'll be able to settle in more quickly. And it will help to foster a good relationship between the employer and the domestic helper. I think the interview, what's the aim of this interview by the Ministry of Manpower is to help them understand on how a domestic helper is doing, how she's adjusting, is her accommodation okay, is she given enough food, has she been asked to perform chores or work duties which will endanger her life, maybe, and if need be, and if so, and if there are issues with the domestic helpers employment in the first 3 months with the employer, then I think it will allow a timely intervention if necessary, and avoid any worst case scenarios that may happen to the domestic helper.
Alright. So,
So
kung
this
meron
the
tayong mga
interview
foreign...
is okay. Go ahead, partner.
Yeah, so sa mga kababayan natin, kung merong magsasabi sa inyo na for interview, ay huwag silang matakot. Diba? Although first time ko nga marinig tong interview na to eh. Diba? Okay,
I think
go
it's
ahead,
done
partner.
in at random, right, Nizam? They are
Yes.
randomly selected.
Yes.
Dagdag ko lang na the interview is conducted by the Center for Domestic Employees. Ito yung designated organization ng MOM to do the interview. This is actually part of the monitoring ng mga domestic workers dito sa Singapore by the MOM.
I see. Okay.
Oh yes,
Go pa.
huwag silang matatakot, no? Kasi kinukumusta lang naman sila ng MOM. Chine-check lang naman kung paano sila nakaka-adapt dun sa kanilang work environment. Sila ba ay pinapakain ng tama? Sila ba ay binibigyan ng adequate rest way? So, yun actually ang kanilang pagkakataon para i-feedback sa MOM yung kanilang naranasan through the CDE.
Yeah, I think just to back up what Sir Labat Saul has mentioned, I hear the word takut, right, which is fearful, right? I think this is where we can actually arrivals that this should be an opportunity for them to communicate any concerns that they have, so they shouldn't be afraid, they shouldn't be nervous or concerned on why they've been asked by the ministry to attend this interview. It is something which it should be a positive thing for the domestic helper to attend this interview to ensure that their welfare is being taken care of.
Of course, because of the name is because the term is interview, so it's a little bit frightening for us if we have those words. Okay. Anyway, go ahead, partner.
Okay. All right. Nizam, I want to ask about rest days and leaves. Okay, so what is the official number of rest days of a foreign domestic worker, and what we are referring to as overseas leave or home leave?
Yeah, okay. So the number of rest days for a domestic helper, it has to be agreed upon between the employer and the domestic helper. Should the domestic helper work on their rest days, then she should be properly compensated. Of course, similarly, if the domestic helper is applying for overseas leave, it has to be in agreement with the employer. I guess both parties should encourage to discuss and agree on the terms of the leave at the start of the employment relationship. I think this is important so that at the start, it already includes all your overseas leave arrangements, or even who will pay for the travel expenses. I think if it's not stated in the employment contract, we really believe that employers should come to a mutual agreement with the domestic helper on these issues. And to minimize any disputes, then I guess it's important that the agreement should be in writing.
All right. Okay. Probably our last question. I'm gonna give this to Sir Labat. Sir, kapag po ba may mga pang-aabuso sa ating mga kababayan, whether verbal or physical, saan ho ba sila dapat tumakbo? Kanino ho ba dapat sila tumakbo?
Marami naman pwede talagang takbuhan. Nandiyan yung police, yung pinakamalapit na police cantonment, ano, yung Ministry of Manpower, yung Philippine Embassy, yung iba pang organizations like FAST, yung CDE, and even home. No? Pag merong threat sa buhay nila, I strongly advise our domestic workers to go to the police. Yung police talaga ang maaari makapag-respond immediately doon sa kanilang sitwasyon. Kung ibang form ng abuse, verbal abuse, pwede sa MOM, or they can also call the Philippine Embassy. Importante, they should be able to make that call. They should be able to at least send an email or send a text message to any of those written organizations. Kasi ang ating mga domestic worker, generally, invisible sila. Hindi sila nakikita kasi nasa household sila, walang tumitingin sa kanila, kundi yung mga taong nasa loob ng household. Kung kailangan nila ng tulong, sila lamang yung makakatulong sa sarili nila. And how can they help themselves? By making the call, by sending a text message, by sending an email to organizations that are there to help.
Okay, at pagdating po sa embahada, ito po yung sa ATN. Pwede po ba silang tumawag sa ATN or sa Polo po yun? Sila dapat pumunta.
Pwede sa ATN or sa Polo.
Okay. Okay. Bago ho siguro sa ating mga katanungan na galing sa Facebook, very quick lang po siguro yan, sir, kasi wala na rin tayong oras.
Madami.
Oo, medyo actually, ang
May mga
daming
follow-up
katanungan.
questions din. Yes.
Ang daming katanungan talaga. Pero bago ho yan, sasabihin ko lang po ay may nagbigay po ng libreng pagkain po sa ating mga foreign domestic workers. Kung kayo po ay nanonood ngayon, i-post nyo lang po i-share nyo lang po yung ating video ngayon at pipili po ang Ellen's Dishes and Desserts para mamigay ng libreng pagkain sa ating mga kababayan na foreign domestic workers. So i-share nyo lang po itong ating palabas kayong kape. Alright? Pasingit lamang nun. Nakalimutan ko kanina, partner. Okay. Sir, first question lang po. Mabilisan lang kay labat na lang po siguro itong mga online questions natin. Finish contract na po ako ngayong November but cannot go home dahil sa COVID. Paano yung ticket ko? Babayaran po ba? And also, sa 2 weeks na vacation, may bayad din po ba? Sabi ni Gina Agron.
Yes, well, yung bakasyon dapat bayad yan, no? Kung 2 weeks siya magpabakasyon at ito yung nasa kontratong pinirmahan niya, dapat bayad siya habang siya ay nasa bakasyon. Kung hindi siya uuwi, walang babayarang ticket. Kasi hindi naman siya uuwi, at least makakauwi. So, walang babayarang ticket.
Pero ang tanong ata niya, sir, is yung 2 weeks niya bakasyon, nandito siya, babayaran pa rin ho ba siya?
Yes, definitely. No? Kung siya ay magbabakasyon at ito ay nasa kontrata, dapat bayaran siya habang siya ay nasa bakasyon.
Okay. Partner?
Ayan, mula naman kay Emeline Modina, kakalipat ko lang sa bagong amo 11 months pa lang pero hindi po ako in-apply ng amo ko ng authenticated contract. Bali, ang hawak ko lang ay agency na papers ng contract. Dapat po ba mandatory na i-apply agad sa embassy ang panibagong authenticated contract? Labat, ano po bang sagot natin dito?
Definitely, dapat bago pa siya magsimula dun sa kanyang bagong employer, dapat meron na siyang verified and authenticated contract na pinrocess sa Philippine Embassy. So, hindi pa naman huli ang lahat. Kahit 11 months na siyang nagtatrabaho ngayon dun sa kanyang bagong employer, siguro sabihan niya yung kanyang employer na i-subject to verification and authentication process yung kanyang kontrata.
Alright. Galing naman po kay Ping Norbes, kunyari tapos na po ang contract mo tapos lilipat ka ng amo, kailangan po ba ng release paper galing sa ex-employer? Kung kailangan po, do we need to ask it directly sa employer or automatic na kung ibinibigay ito sa kanila?
Hindi siya automatic, no? Well, nabanggit natin kanina na kailangan may written consent yung yung existing employer para siya ay makalipat. Kung wala siyang written consent na lumipat, hindi siya makakalipat. Siya ay kailangang umuwi ng Pilipinas. Hindi automatic itong ibinibigay. It has to be secured from the existing employer. And the existing employer should give his or her consent to the transfer of the domestic worker to another employer.
Alright.
Kailangan tungkulin yung consent.
Okay, partner?
Yung sunod naman po, from Josie Evangelista, kung pagpapabunot daw po ng ngipin, sino po ba ang dapat magbayad, ang amo o kami na FDW?
Well, dapat covered yan ng kanyang medical insurance.
Okay. Alright, kay Chandra Bautista Rivera naman po, may long service payment po ba ang FDW after 10 years, lalo na pag pinapalayas ka na ng amo mo?
Dito sa Singapore, there's no such thing as end of service benefit na katulad na nakukuha ng ating mga kababayan doon sa Middle East. No such thing as end of service benefit. So kahit na 20 taon ka nagtrabaho dito sa Singapore, sa ilalim ng isang employer, wala pong ganung regulasyon na nagpo-compel sa employer na magbigay ng end of service benefit or long-term service benefit. Wala po. Nasa siguro pag-uusap na yan ng domestic worker at saka pero wala po sa regulation.
I think, sorry, just to add on what Salabat Saul had mentioned. I think we were talking about salary adjustments. For example, long service awards. Right. I think what we try to champion, and I think MOM has the same initiative or same direction as well, where we would like to encourage employers to consider raising their domestic helper salary periodically, as a reward for their good performance and their loyalty in service. I think they can even consider giving the money to the domestic helper when the domestic helper finishes the contract. I think this incentive has to be agreed upon between the employer and the domestic helper. And I guess where we are coming from is this could motivate the domestic helper to perform better in their job. Yeah, just to support what Salabat Saul has mentioned.
Okay, I'll just ask the last question to Nizam. This is from Melda Expression, and I'll just translate it to English. After the first contract, which is 2 years usually, right? Every year, can she go on home leave?
Yes.
Is
okay.
the home leave, does it become every year after the first contract?
Right. I think in terms of overseas leave, the ministry has some set of set guidelines on how this can be facilitated. Again, I think the application of overseas leave has to be a method that is discussed between the employers and the domestic helpers. It's encouraged to discuss this from the very beginning, right? So that there's no disputes later on. But of course, again, this matter of overseas leave, we encourage our domestic helpers to speak up and discuss this with the employers. So much so that the leave arrangement have been agreed upon beforehand, so that in the future there won't be any disputes that arises.
All right. Thank you, Nizam. All right. It has been a long but very fruitful discussion. We'll ask now for the last words. Nizam?
Yeah.
I think also like to thank Sir Labat Saul. I think FAS has built a very strong bond with the embassy in terms of promoting the welfare and benefits of domestic helpers. And I just want to really thank Sir Labat Saul again for his strong support, his contribution in enabling FAS to provide all the needed social support, training and work-life balance activities for Filipino domestic helpers here in Singapore. Just wanted to say that. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Nizam, and also for all the work that the FAST has been doing for domestic workers, Filipinos, and other nationalities as well.
Yeah, just a
Sir,
very quick one. Nizam, where is FAST located right now?
Okay, we have just moved to 3 Chincheng Avenue. We have a new office, but because of COVID, the renovations are still ongoing. So we you can't see the vision yet of our hub. But of course, if any domestic helpers need to contact us, if they need assistance, we have a 24-hour helpline that is run by my team and group. So the number is 1-800-339-4357. I hope the domestic helpers can get it. I just say it again. So 1-800-339-4357. It's 24 hours. And if you need assistance or have some issues with the employers, please feel free to contact us as well.
All right, we will post the
we
numbers
will
in
just
our
post.
Facebook
Thanks so much.
page. All right,
Thank
thanks a lot. Sir, last words po
Yeah.
tayo, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Dasi, again, for having me back. Of course, I always welcome to be part of your program. Thank you also, Nisa. It is always our pleasure to support past activities. And certainly,
Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
we'd like to continue our partnership for the benefit of our domestic workers here in Singapore. Bilin ko lang sa ating mga kababayan, sa mga domestic workers, mag-ingat po tayo palagi. Nakakalungkot po yung nangyari kay Marilo. So iba yung pag-iingat po pag kayo ay nasa labas. At ini-spend yung inyong day off. So, yun lamang.
All right, sir, maraming salamat po for joining us tonight. I hope this is not the last time again, sir. Napakabait talaga ni Sir Saul pagdating sa pag-iimbita namin sa kanya dito sa aming munting programa.
Wag po kayong
Alright.
magsasawa.
Yes, wag po kayong magsasawa. All right, maraming salamat, sir.
Thank you,
And also to
Nizam,
Nizam,
and
thank you
Nabat.
very much.
Thank you so much, June and Desi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, all right.
Appreciate it.
Mula po sa aming tahanan dito sa Singapore, ako po muli si June Rigonan.
At ako naman po si Dazilin Zapata.
Diyan lamang kayo, Nizam and Sir. Quick picture lang tayo after that. At abangan po ninyo muli sa susunod na linggo sa mga pinakabago, makabuluhan at na mga napapanahong impormasyon at talakayan ang tunay na public service na hatid namin para sa inyo.
Mula sa programang ginawa ng mga overseas Filipino para sa mga kapwa overseas Filipino, ito ang Weekends
with
with
Rated J.
Rated J.
Marami po salamat. Stand by for He Said, She Said.
Stand by
Medyo
for
delayed
He
lang
Said,
po
She
tayo
Said.
ng konti pero we are coming soon. All right? Okay, thank you very much.